Namaste. Welcome back, Stellar Stargazers, and a warm cosmic hello to our new listeners. I'm Sophie.
And I'm Heather, and you're tuning into the Stellar Soulcast,
where we decode the cosmos one episode at a time.
And in our last episode, we took a plunge into the underworld with Pluto, the planet of transformation, power, and rebirth. We talked about how Pluto asks us to face the shadows, release what no longer serves, and rise stronger through the cycles of death and renewal.
But for today's episode, we're now turning our gaze to Chiron, not a planet, but an asteroid with profound impact. Known as the wounded healer, Chiron reveals the tender places in our charts where we feel broken. However, it's also showing us how those very wounds can become our greatest gifts. But as always, before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe at the Stellar Soulcast and open your astro journals because this one is going to get deep. There's going to be healing, and we're going to show you how to beautify transformation.
All right, stargazers, now that you've got your astro journals ready, we're about to journey into the most tender, wise, and transformative myths in the cosmos. But fair warning, this mythological dive is going to feel a little different from our past planetary deep dives, because Chiron isn't a traditional planet at all. Like Sophie just said, he's a beautiful asteroid, but his story is deeply spiritual at its core. Chiron, like Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, debuted on the astrological stage much later because he was also discovered with modern technological advancements. He was discovered in 1977, orbiting between Saturn and Uranus by astronomer Charles Cowell. And after its discovery, astronomers followed their long-standing tradition of pulling from classical mythology and named the asteroid after the centaur Chiron. In Greek mythology, Chiron was unlike the wild, unruly centaurs often portrayed as rowdy and indulgent. Rather, Chiron was gentle, wise, and deeply learned. He was known as a healer, a teacher, astrologer, and a mentor to many of the great heroes, including Achilles, Jason, and Hercules. But despite all his gifts, Chiron carried an incredible wound. Struck by a poisoned arrow, he suffered pain that even his vast knowledge of medicine and magic could not heal. This paradox gave rise to his enduring title, the Wounded Healer. He could not heal himself, but he became the master teacher of healing and guiding others with unparalleled wisdom and compassion. Chiron's myth reminds us that our deepest pain often becomes our deepest gifts. In other words, he shows us that through the cracks, the light of empathy and purpose has the ability to shine through. We want to quickly mention that Chiron's discovery in astrology was synchronistic with a cultural rise in holistic healing, therapy, and a collective shift towards integrating science with spirituality. So, his timing couldn't have been more symbolic during an era which called for the collective to face their wounds, embrace their vulnerability, and heal through wisdom. Moving along, it is important to know that astrologically, Chiron represents wounds and vulnerability, healing and integrity, empathy and compassion, as well as wisdom through pain. He might be small in size, but he is profound in influence as he sits as a bridge between Saturn, who symbolizes structure and limitation, and Uranus, who symbolizes awakening and liberation. As a result, Chiron is sometimes called the Rainbow Bridge, symbolizing how we move from the tangible lessons of pain into the higher awareness of healing and transformation. This is also symbolic of its namesake because Chiron, the centaur, was known to live between two worlds, the world of the immortal gods and the mortal heroes he mentored. To summarize, Chiron's mythos says, "Your wound is not your weakness, it is your wisdom. Through the healing of yourself, you help to heal the world." So, stargazers, take a deep breath and open your heart, because today we're meeting the part of you that carries both hurt with healing and wounds with wisdom.
Yes. Now, let's move on to what Chiron represents in astrology. You may be asking, what does Chiron represent in your chart? Well, stargazers, unlike the outer planets with their sweeping collective themes, Chiron speaks to something much more personal. He shows up not as a wrecking ball or a cosmic dreamweaver, but as the tender ache that never fully goes away and the wisdom that only comes from working with it. Chiron reveals where we experience deep wounds, where we feel not enough, and where we're called to transform that pain into empathy, teaching, and healing. He's not about perfection, he's about integration, showing us that wholeness includes both the broken pieces and the light that shines through them. Let's break it down. Chiron represents wounds and vulnerability. This is the tender spot in your chart, the place where you may feel insecure, unworthy, or deeply sensitive. Chiron shows the pain you carry, often from childhood or early life, that feels like it never truly goes away. He also rules healing and integration. Here is where the paradox lives. That is, the wound never vanishes, but rather it becomes your compass. Chiron reveals where you can grow stronger through self-acceptance and where you become a healer for others because what you've lived through. Empathy and compassion are very important themes associated with Chiron. This is where you felt pain that you understand in others. Chiron points to where your wounds become your greatest gifts, making you a guide, a teacher, and a source of comfort for those walking similar paths. And lastly, wisdom through pain are common trends. Chiron doesn't promise quick fixes. Instead, he teaches us that healing is cyclical, layered, and ongoing. Each time the wound reopens, it invites us to return with more awareness, more compassion, and more strength. And here's where it gets astrologically fascinating. As Heather just mentioned, Chiron is sometimes called the Rainbow Bridge, because he orbits between Saturn and Uranus. Symbolically, this means Chiron connects the practical work of facing our pains with its association with Saturn, with the higher awareness of transcending it with the help of Uranus. Moving along, let's talk a little bit about how Chiron influences your chart. Some astrologers associate Chiron as a co-ruler with Mercury, particularly when it comes to healing, teaching, and integration of body and mind. While Mercury governs communication and the nervous system, Chiron brings in the layer of wisdom through experience and the healing of those very systems. Together, their energy highlights the link between thought, words, and the power of healing. Chiron doesn't have a traditional rulership, but many astrologers link his energy with Virgo, healing, service, and integration. Or Sagittarius, that wisdom, teaching, and philosophy. Regardless of the debate, Chiron's role is always clear. He's here to help us face our wounds and turn them into medicine for others and ourselves. It's important to take away that Chiron doesn't work in a straight line and doesn't finish like a checklist. His energy ebbs and flows. It's a lifelong spiral of remembering, healing, teaching, and growing. He's not the astrological planet that hands you a torch like Pluto or a paintbrush like Neptune. He is the one that hands you a mirror and whispers, "This pain is also your power." So to sum it all up, if your sun is the CEO of your chart and your moon is your emotional compass, then Chiron is your inner healer, the guide who turns scars into wisdom, pain into compassion, and wounds into soul-level medicine. Now, take a deep breath, stargazers, because up next we're talking about Chiron retrograde. Heather, are you ready to guide us into the healing cave?
You know it. I always love giving highlight to our retrogrades. Now, unlike Saturn's structure or Uranus's rebellion, Chiron isn't here to tear things down. He's here to bring tender truths back to the surface, reminding you of the wounds you've carried and the wisdom you're still uncovering. So, cue the "why is this coming up again" spiral, because when Chiron goes retrograde, the universe is not asking you to keep running forward. Nope, it's slowing you down so you can revisit the old aches, tend to what's still tender, and remember that healing isn't linear. Let's break it down. Chiron goes retrograde once a year for about 5 months. And for our stargazers tuning in for the first time, retrograde refers to when a planet or terrestrial body appears to move backwards in the sky from our perspective here on Earth. It's not really reversing, it's just an optical illusion, but energetically, its effects of feeling as if we were being pulled inward is very real. So, what might Chiron retrograde feel like? During this time, old wounds will resurface and themes you thought you healed may bubble back up, not to punish you, but to show you how far you've actually come. Also, your emotional vulnerability is high. You may feel raw, extra sensitive, or confronted with insecurities that go way back. And you may also experience powerful teaching moments where you may notice yourself becoming a guide for others who are walking the very path you once struggled with. And lastly, wisdom integration is a powerful trend. Each time the wound comes back around, it offers a deeper layer of compassion, insight, and self-acceptance. Now, stargazers, let's be clear. This is not a cosmic curse. Chiron retrograde is the soul's invitation to revisit the parts of ourselves we'd rather cover up, and instead approach them with gentleness. Chiron is asking you questions such as, what pain still lingers beneath the surface of my story? Or, what wisdom have I already gained from this wound? And how can I turn this ache into compassion for myself and others? Lastly, where can I stop hiding and start healing openly? But don't worry, stargazers, your astro besties, Sophie and I, have some stellar tips to help you navigate Chiron's backspin with grace. Journal your wounds and write down what comes up during this season. Notice patterns or memories that resurface. They're clues, not curses. Also, be sure to practice gentle rituals. Light a candle, take a salt bath. It's important to focus on soothing your spirit and not fixing it. During this time, it is also important to revisit old healing tools. Maybe it's therapy, Reiki, meditation, or simple breathing practices. See what feels aligned and how that works with you. Another is to be mindful of how to hold space for others. Sometimes healing depends on when we help someone else walk through what we've already endured. Lastly, be sure to practice self-compassion. Treat yourself like a student and not like a failure. Chiron retrograde is about deepening and not starting over. And before ending this segment, here's a little cosmic heads up. As of this recording, it's mid to late August 2025, and Chiron is currently in retrograde in Aries. That means collectively we're revisiting themes around identity, self-worth, and the courage to be unapologetically ourselves. This retrograde began on July 30th of this year and will last until January 2nd, 2026. And to summarize, Chiron retrograde isn't here to reopen wounds to hurt you. Rather, it's here to remind you that healing is a spiral. Each return deepens your wisdom, strengthens your compassion, and reconnects you with the healer inside. And now that we've explored Chiron retrograde, Sophie, ready to talk about how Chiron shows up in your birth chart?
Yep. Okay, stargazers, it's time to take a tour through the zodiac. Remember, your Chiron placement not only shows where you hold your deepest wounds, but it also sheds light on where your greatest healing gifts live. Think of it as both the sore spot and the superpower. And as we move through each sign, keep in mind that your Chiron sign will show how this energy feels for you. For this speed date, we aren't breaking it up into elements, but rather Chiron's significance to each sign. Let's dive in, beginning with our first member of the zodiac. Dun dun dun, Chiron in Aries. Your wound is feeling unseen, undervalued, or struggling with self-worth and identity. You may feel as if you're never enough or you must prove yourself constantly, but your gift is teaching courage, authenticity, and leadership. By healing your own self-image, you inspire others to boldly be themselves. Your mantra is, my presence is powerful enough just as I am. Now, if you have Chiron in Taurus, your wound struggles around security, stability, money, or self-value. You might also tie worth to possessions or fear lack of material possessions. Your gift, however, is grounding others in abundance and self-worth. You help others reconnect to the richness of life beyond material things. Your motto is, my value isn't what I am, it's who I am. Moving on to Chiron in Gemini, your wound is associated with pain around communication, learning, or not being heard. You might have felt dismissed, silenced, or misunderstood during important moments. On the other hand, your gift is becoming a powerful communicator, storytelling, or teacher who helps others find their voice. You live by the saying, my words carry truth and healing. Now, Let's talk about Chiron in Cancer. Your wound circles around emotional wounds tied to family, home, or feeling unsafe to nurture or be nurtured. You may feel abandoned, over-responsible, or overly protective. Your gift, however, is teaching the importance of emotional safety, creating supportive environments, and modeling compassionate care. Your motto is, I create safety by honoring my own heart. Now to shed sunshine on Chiron and Leo. Your wound is associated with the fear of being overlooked, rejected, or unworthy of recognition. You may struggle with self-expression or fear shining too brightly, but your gift is empowering others to find their own light, creativity, and authenticity. Teach that true recognition starts from within. Your guiding belief is, I shine because it's my nature, not because I need applause. Let's move along to Chiron in Virgo. Your wounds surround the struggle with perfectionism, service, or health. You may feel like nothing you do is ever good enough or that your flaws define you, but your gift is healing through compassion, service, and acceptance of imperfection and healing others to see the sacred in the small details. You stand by my wholeness exists in my humanity, not my perfection. Up next is Chiron in Libra. Your wound is pain in relationships, fairness, or balance. You may fear rejection, abandonment, or struggle to find equality in partnerships. Your gift, though, is guiding others towards harmony, fairness, and authentic connection, and bringing healing through modeling balance and soulful relationships. You live by the words, my relationships thrive when I honor my truth. Now, for Chiron in Scorpio, your wound is associated with trauma around trust, power, intimacy, or control. You may feel betrayed, manipulated, or fearful of vulnerability. However, you have a strong gift of helping others face shadows, transform pain, and reclaim power by teaching the vulnerability is strength. You remind yourself that I transform by trusting my power within. Next up is Chiron in Sagittarius. Your wound is the crisis of faith, truth, or meaning. You may feel betrayed by belief system, cultures, or mentors. Your gift is teaching wisdom, philosophy, and expansive perspectives by inspiring others to question, explore, and find their own truth. Your soul compass is, my truth is a compass that expands as I grow. Now, we have Chiron in Capricorn. Your wound is associated with the pain around success, authority, or responsibility. You may feel that you'll never measure up or struggle with fear of failure. Your gift, though, is mentoring others to define success on their own term by teaching integrity, patience, and the value of soulful achievements. You stand by, my worth is not my status, it's the legacy of my truth. Now, let's talk Chiron in Aquarius. Your wound is feeling like an outsider or not belonging and may fear rejection from groups or hide individuality to fit in. But you have a strong gift of guiding others to embrace uniqueness and celebrate individuality by becoming a voice for inclusivity and collective healing. Your rally cry is, my uniqueness is what connects me to the whole. And lastly, Chiron in Pisces. Your wound is struggling with boundaries, spirituality, or feeling overwhelmed by collective pain. You may feel lost, unseen, or overly sacrificial. However, your gift is guiding others forward towards compassion, forgiveness, and faith by bringing deep spiritual wisdom and reminding them that empathy is sacred. You remind yourself, my sensitivity is my superpower, not my weakness. Knowing your Chiron sign is like holding the map to your deepest wound and that medicine for your soul that you came here to share. It may feel raw, tender, or even lifelong at times, but it's also where your greatest wisdom lies. So the next time an old ache resurfaces, just remember, that's not weakness. That's Chiron whispering, here is where your pain becomes your power.
Deep.
Yeah.
Love it all. So much on Chiron.
Yeah.
But stargazers, now that we've explored Chiron through the signs, let's layer in the houses. Remember, the sign of your Chiron shows the flavor of the wound, while the house shows the arena of life where this energy plays out. This is where the story really becomes personal. Chiron in the first house, identity and self. Your wound is struggling with self-image and feeling like you've never been enough, or maybe difficulty of being seen. But your gift is inspiring others through authenticity and courage to embrace who you are. A reflection for you is, ask yourself, who am I when I stop trying to prove myself? Now, if you have Chiron in the second house, which is values and security, your wound is associated with insecurity around money, possessions, or self-worth, and you may tie value to material things. However, your gift is teaching others how to cultivate true inner worth and stability. A takeaway for you is security comes not from what you hold in your hands, but from what you hold in your heart. Moving on to Chiron in the third house, communication and learning, your wound is feeling unheard, misunderstood, or silenced. You may struggle in early learning or sibling dynamics, but your gift is becoming a healer through words, stories, or teachings. Some guidance for you is notice how your wounds can become bridges for others who once felt voiceless. Now we're going to move on to Chiron in the fourth house, which is home and family. Your wound is tied to the pain of family roots or early emotional safety. You may feel a lack of belonging at home. On the other hand, your gift is creating nurturing, safe spaces and teaching emotional healing. And remember, our fourth house placement, Chirons, you have the power to build the kind of home, physically and emotionally, that you always longed for. And moving along to Chiron in the fifth house, creativity and joy. Your wound is the fear of not being creative or special or worthy of love and struggling with self-expression of joy. But your gift is inspiring others to embrace play, their creativity, and authentic love. An encouragement is let your joy be messy, loud, and imperfect. That's where the healing really is. Now for our Chiron in the sixth house, which is healing and service. Your wound struggles with health, daily routines, or feeling useful. You may overwork or feel like you're never good enough. But your gift is guiding others to heal through service, balance, and honoring the body. Some insight for you is healing isn't about fixing everything. It's about caring for what matters the most, one step at a time. And Chiron in the seventh house, relationships and partnerships. Your wound comes with pain through partnerships, rejection, or feeling unseen by others, which may attract imbalanced relationships. However, your gift is teaching the power of healthy connection, fairness, and true intimacy. A quick little tip for you is, love that heals doesn't ask you to shrink, it meets you where you are. And moving along to Chiron in the eighth house, transformation and intimacy. Your wound is deep trauma around trust, intimacy, sexuality, or shared resources. But your gift is helping others heal through shadow work, transformation, and reclaiming power. Your truth is what feels the hardest to face often becomes the source of your deepest strength. Now, Chiron in the ninth house. That is belief and expansion. Your wound is the crisis of faith, confusion in beliefs, or struggles with the higher of learning. Your gift is guiding others through philosophy, spiritual teaching, and wisdom gained through experience. Remember to question yourself, though. What if your faith wasn't about certainty, but about exploration? And for Chiron in the 10th house placement, career and legacy, your wound is the fear of failure, struggles with authority, or feeling unworthy of success. But you have an amazing gift of mentoring others to redefine success and rebuild legacy with integrity. Some perspective for you is true success isn't measured in titles, it's in the lives you touch along the way. Now, let's move along to Chiron in the 11th house, that is community and dreams. Your wound is feeling excluded, rejected by groups, or as if you don't really belong. But your gift is healing communities and inspiring inclusivity, vision, and shared dreams. Your vision is your uniqueness is the very thing that makes your community stronger. And lastly, Chiron in the 12th house, spirituality and the unconscious. Your wound is feeling disconnected from source, hidden fears, or struggles with the boundaries in spiritual and psychic realms. But your gift is becoming a guide for others in spiritual healing, compassion, and transcendence. Some wisdom for you all is, the more you surrender to what's unseen, the more connected you become to everything. We know that this was a lot to take in here, stargazers, but the biggest takeaway is to remember that knowing your Chiron house placement is like holding the map to where your wound and your healing journey comes alive. It's the life arena where your pain becomes purpose and where your story becomes the medicine for others.
All right, stargazers. We've talked about Chiron in all the signs and houses, but you know we love to get personal with you. So let's open up and share where our Chiron shows up in our own chart. Because it's one thing to read the theory, but another to actually feel how this energy plays out in your life.
Exactly. And remember, sharing our stories isn't about saying this is how it will be for you, but showing you how Chiron themes can weave into real experiences. So, Sophie, you want to go first?
Sure. My Chiron is in Libra in the 3rd house. Chiron in Libra carries wounds around relationships, fairness, and feeling seen in partnerships, while the 3rd house highlights communication, learning, and early connections like siblings or peers. And for me, this shows up as sometimes doubting my voice, worrying about how I'm perceived, or feeling like I had to smooth things over instead of speaking my truth. But through that wound, I found my gift, which is using my voice to connect, to teach, and to inspire others to honor their own truth in relationships. Honestly, being here on the podcast with you all feels like the most healing expression of that placement for me. My Libra 3rd house wound reminds me to speak boldly, even when it feels uncomfortable. Yes.
Yo, dude, I just thought about something.
What?
All right, we're going to scratch side-eye Sophie.
Oh.
And we're going to do no gatekeeping Sophie.
Gatekeeping Sophie, that's right.
Yeah, because it's so applicable.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, it's so true. Like, and Heather says this all the time, but through, like, doing the podcast and learning more and more and more about astrology, even, like, the real nitty-gritty of all the, you know, celestial bodies and the planets and the houses and stuff. This is so accurate. Growing up, even my like background with my childhood, the whole thing with like siblings and peers growing up, that was a big thing for me. And it's crazy how astrology affirms so much that of my experiences. It like blows my mind more and more like every day.
It's so amazing. Mm-hmm. It really is. Because even for me, I'm going to throw this out there. I didn't know about Chiron until maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. Right. No idea.
Right.
And, you know, I'm in my early 30s and I always loved astrology. But like I have said in our beginning episodes, and we're still in the beginning of this cosmic journey.
Yeah.
I really didn't know until deep diving in. Mm-hmm. So it's really cool because for my Chiron, I think it says a lot because my Chiron is in Leo. In the 12th house. And no, seriously, and honestly, that combination really does speak volumes because Chiron in Leo carries a wound around that recognition, creativity, and feeling worthy of shining. And the 12th house, those wounds live in the unconscious and often hidden and tied to spirituality or isolation. Yeah. And for me, it sometimes shows up as feeling like my light has to be dimmed or that being seen is, you know, my full creative expression isn't safe. And this really does speak a lot of volumes because what I've learned is that by working through that fear, I've actually have helped others find the courage to let their own light shine. But my healing comes from reminding myself and all of you stargazers that our authenticity is divine, even when it feels like vulnerable. Because my Leo 12th house wound reminds me to keep shining, even when I want to hide. And how many times have we said that before? I know we had spoken about that in Venus, too, because my Venus in Scorpio. but it really is very applicable. And and it's so crazy because it's what we just spoke about.
Literally.
Yeah.
And have had like conversations about even like before the whole podcast.
Yes. And what I really want to say is I know we've spoken about it before, and for our stargazers that have been listening through, or if you haven't already, in our first episode, I had spoken about how spirituality and more so the supernatural, and I'm just going to use supernatural as a term for a holistic or broad expression of spirits and things of that genre, has been more applicable in my life than astrology.
Right.
But when I start learning about astrology and seeing those wounds with Chiron, and especially the 12th house, which is kind of tied to all of those themes, it's interesting. But in other placements too in astrology, because all of that is kind of a similar realm, right? So it's just very fascinating.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating.
And we hope you guys feel the same way, through learning.
And Chiron, I believe, is being more exposed, I think, right?
Yeah.
So it's something that you're starting to hear a little bit more. Even in our introductory of the planets,
right?
We said we were going to do the honorable mention of Chiron.
Right.
Because, in astrology, planets are celestial bodies. This might not be like a actual planet in astronomy, but it is an asteroid.
Exactly.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
Well, all right, stargazers, it's time to open those astro journals and get tender with ourselves. This week's homework isn't about burning it all down. It's about learning what it has to teach us and discovering the wisdom hidden inside of our wounds. Here are some Chiron reflection prompts for you guys so that you can go on this journey. To start off, think about, where do you feel most tender or not enough? What strength has this wound already given you? How can you show yourself compassion here? How might you use this healing to guide others? Now, look up your Chiron placement and the house. Remember, your Chiron sign shows the flavor of the wound and the healing gift that you have. And your Chiron house reveals the life area where this journey plays out most strongly. Here's your Chiron mission for this week. Write about one moment your wound resurfaced and what it taught you. Reframe it into a healing gift or strength. Do one small act of compassion for yourself and share a piece of your wisdom with someone else. Remember, Chiron's magic isn't about erasing the wound, but turning it into light for yourself and for others.
And with that, stargazers, we hope this Chiron deep dive helped you reflect on your own healing journey, cracked open some tender truths, and maybe even inspired you to see your scars as symbols of wisdom rather than weaknesses. Now for our next episode, our cosmic journey, is aligning perfectly with the stars because we're diving into all things Virgo for our beautiful Virgo season, which just started.
Oh, yeah.
At the time of this recording. And we're going to explore Virgo's earthy wisdom, their connection to healing and service, and why this season is all about refining, grounding, and getting intentional.
Yes.
And before we say our stellar sayonara, don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app and the one you're listening on right now so you never miss a cosmic drop. Follow us on all our socials at the Stellar Soulcast for your daily astro inspo and updates. And share with us your Chiron sign and house. We'd love to hear how you're journeying your wounds and how that brings wisdom to your life. With that, we want to remind you all to
keep reaching for the stars and trusting the vibes. Until next time, stargazer.